If you don't have a tiny bit of like, oh man, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
That it isn't something that's important enough to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to always say this to my team when I was leading teams that were in the OR and working with patients, because you've got a patient on the table, you're bringing your device in. Like that's a lot of responsibility.
That sounds like
right? That's
pretty
someone's
scary.
mom or grandma or granddad. And in spinal cord stimulation, they actually work directly with the patients, the reps do. And so I would always tell them, it's like, if you don't have a tiny bit of like, do I have everything? That little bit of like healthy paranoia is what I call it. Then it's time to get out of the role. Because that's when you're going to make mistakes. That's when you're going to get too far over and overpromise and underdeliver. And that's the thing that kills careers. And it doesn't matter what facet of business, corporate or entrepreneurship that you're in, if you are promising something and you are so lax on the delivery and you can't or don't deliver, then you're never going to really get where you want to go.
So, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's so good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you as well. So, welcome to the Round 2 podcast.
I'm so excited. I love the rebrand.
Thank
and I love
you.
that we're actually getting to do this in person.
I know. It's
this
really
is such
fun.
a luxury.
It really is, because I actually have never done a podcast. Actually, no, that's not true. I did do one in person in 2023 in my house that we tried to film, and I did not know how to work a camera. So it's like, when you have a camera and there's like all those little settings on the screen.
Yeah.
Those were also on the screen. And I was like, why are those there?
I feel like that's a first time.
Yeah.
Right?
So then needless to say, I only published the audio on that one. So
got it. And have you been doing video only or video and audio podcasts ever since you started?
So I started doing video in 2024 with my second episode that I released in 2024, or maybe my first, I don't remember. But yeah, and I was using a camera, but I stopped using it because it would like autofocus. And I obviously didn't know how to turn the autofocus off. So I just use my computer now.
Technology is hard.
Technology
I get it.
is hard.
Yeah. I had a Zoom fail, which I didn't realize when you hide your Zoom video, if you record it, that unless you record to the cloud, it will not record your face and the slides.
Oh.
So it was this really cool, just my booming voice, like I was the Wizard of Oz.
Nice.
For 75 minutes.
Oh, so that's a long time. You're like, here we go.
Here I am.
Sorry you can't see me.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. Well, tell me what has been going on. Like, I know that things are moving quick.
Yeah. So it's like, where do I start? I think since we saw each other last, the biggest news and update in my coaching world is that I started my group coaching program.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes. So to rewind, because I'm sure like folks that are like, who's this chick and why is she here?
Oh, yeah.
I hit my 1 year free-versary, I guess it will be, but
free of corporate life.
Yes, exactly. You knew exactly where I was going.
Yes.
January of this year.
Oh, congratulations.
So so I'm at my 1 year. My business is not 1 year old though yet, because I took, some time and traveled and did all the things that one should do when you leave corporate America.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I hit my 1 year like free of corporate, and I thought, well, what's the best way of celebrating that? And since I coach and consult specifically in med device, and I work almost entirely with women in med device, I figured let's help as many women as I can in celebration of my 1 year.
Awesome.
And so I launched my group coaching program. I have 20 amazing ladies that are in the program and show up on a weekly basis. Some that come and have to listen to those Zoom recordings that have just my booming voice on them and no video. But it's been an awesome program so far. We're halfway through. Yeah. And that program really is focused on the skills that you need to elevate your career in corporate America.
That's so
and the
great.
Stuff that no one teaches you, right?
Yes.
That's been the whole thesis of my business. So when I started, really September of last year is when I launched my coaching business and working with sales reps, sales leaders in medical device, helping them have the insights that no one tells you, right? Your company's always going to tell you how to negotiate a contract, how to sell to your customer, but they're not going to teach you how to sell yourself to your manager or to your organization for your promotion, right? How to negotiate for your own raise, because they don't want you to be that good at it. They want to pay you fairly, hopefully.
Sell all of our stuff, but don't sell yourself so you can get yourself promoted.
Right, because they want to pay you fairly, pay you what they need to pay you, but not pay you more than what they need to pay you, right? And so that's a lot of what we dig into in the group coaching program. So it's been really fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah, to play around with that and just get to help more women. You know, when I'm doing one-on-one work, it's limited to who I'm working with in that moment. And so to get to have a group of women and build that community for them as well has been really fun.
That is so fun. And I think that that's one of the biggest benefits about these different like cohorts or challenges or like even like little boot camps or whatever they are. I'm now doing my second kind of longer term one. It's like been a month or it's almost a month. We're in week 4 right now.
Okay.
And it's been so awesome. The amount of really cool people that I've connected with. And it's just like, I never would have met these people otherwise. And now I'm like, this is so amazing.
Well, and it's those connections that then spin you into something else.
Yeah.
Because you never know who else you're going to meet and
Absolutely.
like what connections they will have.
Right.
Yeah. So when I left corporate America, I knew I was starting my own business. And it's funny because the thing that I spend the least amount of time on now is my website. But the thing that I spent the most amount of time on in that first 6 months was figuring out what's the look and feel, like what's my message, like, you know, what's the whole point? Because I think the one thing as an entrepreneur, and especially as a round 2 entrepreneur, right? You're looking at it of like, okay, what is this next round of my career going to be like? And what's the focus of it? And does what I want to do match up with what people really need?
I know, right? That's the thing that's like so tough with any sort of business. And that's like one of the things that I see, you know, when I'm talking with different founders at startups and whatnot. And it's like sometimes you can get so focused on your idea that you get lost in, is it actually something that people are like willing to pay you for?
Yeah.
And so I imagine that's like very similar with like the coaching that you wanted to put out in the world because it's very specific. You have your niche, you know exactly who you're targeting, but then you're like, oh wait, are they going to actually want this?
Yeah. That was a real like, okay, are we going to do this? And, you know, admittedly, I've been in this space for 15 years. So I spent 11 years working at Boston Scientific, Fortune 500, you know, moved into leadership there, you know, grew teams to $25, $30 million, managed a ton of people. So I knew how to coach, right? I knew how to help people grow their careers, grow their sales, grow their impact.
Yeah.
And then I spent time at a startup. And so I got to see like the commercialization and really understand at all scales and scopes how to do these things. And I saw the challenges that these sales leaders and sales reps faced. So I knew they were there, but it really was helping people understand the value of investing in support and resources.
Yeah.
Because as an entrepreneur, you recognize that your time is valuable.
Yeah.
If someone else can teach you how to do, right? We were talking about SEO, right? How much of a pain some of those things are. Yes, you want to know how to do them, but if someone can teach you their shortcuts, help you with what they've learned or had to like fall on their face and get back up and try again, like all of those almost like repetitions that you inherently get in your toolbox when you engage with someone in a boot camp or in a course, in a program, in coaching. And so one thing in what I realized in medical device is we don't focus on that as an industry. It's that everyone kind of goes to their medical device job and expects like, if I'm a leader, they're going to teach me how to be a leader. And if I'm a sales rep, they're going to teach me how to sell. But there's not this mindset of I need to invest in myself. Which is such an interesting conundrum too, because especially as women, you know, lots of women have children, but even if you don't have children, like we're both, you know, pet parents. And there's no amount of money that I would not be willing to invest in my pet, right? And their well-being and their training.
The amount of money that I already have invested in said pet.
But when you turn the mirror on us as women, we're like, oh, I don't need to do that. I don't need to invest in myself. So that has been, really the learning for me is helping people understand the value of working with a coach, of having those opportunities to get the insights and understand the things that no one's telling you unless you have a really great mentor or a sponsor. And those opportunities to have those type of people in your career, like that's a lightning in the bottle kind of situation.
Yeah.
You're either really lucky or you've had to work a really long time and learned your lessons by skinning your knees. So really the goal is just to help women accelerate faster, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have to skin their knees.
No, that's so incredible. And I'm so excited because I remember when you posted first about the group coaching and I was like, oh, this is so cool that you're doing this. So to have 20 people in there and be halfway through, like, good job.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you put it out there, like I launched the wait list on January 3rd and I thought, dear God.
Yeah, were you like, what am I doing?
And then the wait list, they actually had access to purchase. And when that first purchase came in, I was like, oh my God, there's one person. That's it. That's all I need. We are good to go. But yeah, it's like anything, like in your first sales role, in your, first marketing job, like that first project, that first, where you really step out and say, okay, this is my, like you plant the flag in the sand and say, I'm doing this. Then that's where, it gets a little nerve wracking of like, well, I'm doing it. And now everyone knows I'm doing it. So.
Well, that's really exciting. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
I am so happy for you.
It's been a fun journey. I mean, I think it's similar to your entrepreneurial journey, right? You follow the path and then start to open doors. And sometimes the doors open themselves for you and sometimes they shut right in your face.
Well, and that's such a great way to put it. Like, I feel like more and more as I'm just kind of staying in alignment with like who I am and what I want, I feel like the right people just like keep coming my way. And whether it's, just like a new connection that turns into a friend, or if it's a potential business opportunity that I literally never would have come across had I not put myself out there in some way, or joined a course, or joined a community, or met this person because we connected on LinkedIn and they liked a post of mine. And so then we DM'd each other. I mean, it's like so crazy.
Which is exactly how we met,
I
right?
know. But like, isn't it, it's just nuts how it all works like that. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's so much fun also.
I think that's the beauty of what LinkedIn and what all of social media can be. But I think LinkedIn is in this really unique spot compared to like Instagram, which is so commercialized and like really like industrialized now. Like it is a living, right? There's a few people that probably are making LinkedIn influencer money, but the majority of people are supporting or like advertising their businesses or advertising their companies. Like it's very much because it's geared to that professional networking. Yeah. It just, at least in my experience, has felt different. And the connections that I've made, like you, like the other women that I've connected with, men too, just, it's so interesting to see how welcoming people are and how supportive.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That has been one of the nicest parts about being on there. And I think, you kind of like end up finding your people. Yeah. There are some, I mean, it's funny because there are some people that I connected with kind of early on in my spending more time on that platform. Yeah. And then I kind of got to a point where I'm like, oh, like I'm not really interested in this. And it's interesting because I think like now that they don't show up anymore. So I'm like, oh, like you're not even like in my algorithm right now. Like other people are in my algorithm. And then I keep growing my network and like keep meeting cooler people. And I'm like, okay, let's stay here in this algorithm. I like it.
Yeah. Which if anyone could teach me what the algorithm is doing behind the scenes, because that if there's anything that is on like crazy juice, it is the LinkedIn algorithm.
I mean, I think that algorithms are such a mystery and they're forever changing. And there is, I don't even know. I mean, I remember hearing at one point that, the LinkedIn schedule post feature,
right?
That like they penalize you for using it. I'm like, then why give it to us? Because it's brilliant. Like I love that feature. I had like 30 posts scheduled at one point.
Do you schedule?
Not anymore. Okay. Now I'm just like flying off the cuff and I don't even care. Because that's like the thing. I was like trying to be so structured and to be perfectly frank about LinkedIn, I have got kind of like overwhelmed by it and it kind of exhausts me at this point. And not in like a negative towards anybody way, but more like I'm connected with people, and you are definitely one of them, who puts out phenomenal posts. And I'm like, I am like riffing off the cuff. Like I think about something and I'm like, let's like type this up. But sometimes I'm also like, too, sometimes people's posts can be very lengthy. And then I'm like, okay, I don't really have the time to read through 50 well thought out, well put together posts and then put a thoughtful comment on it as well. So I've had to just kind of not put that pressure on myself to do that, but also to still continue engaging as much as I can. Like putting alerts on for certain people has been great because then it's like, at least I'm seeing what people are doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I'm just like, wow, I'm like,
it is a lot. And thank you for those kind words. Cause I also fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to LinkedIn posting. And
no, your posts are so good.
For me, and it's different for everyone, but I have to feel connected to the content and feel inspired. Like today, we're on the heels of the Super Bowl. So I posted about Jalen Hurts and his all-female management team. Like, of course I would post about that. I'm a coach who supports women in medical device.
Totally.
I'm all about getting women in leadership and representation. So where I struggle, I think there's a balance, right? I talk a lot with my clients about systems, like the power of systems, of doing things and making them easy for you to do. You're always going to be more consistent. You're going to be more successful when you're more consistent. End of story.
Absolutely.
But there's also something to be said for being able to, in real time, respond to what's happening in the world. So I haven't struck the perfect balance yet. But yeah, I'm still a LinkedIn, like post in the moment. I've had to do the same thing. I took my first weekend entirely off of LinkedIn this past weekend.
Good job.
All Saturday, all Sunday. I caught myself once on Saturday opening the app and I was like, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah.
And my engagement is up from where it was 2 weeks ago. And so it's
funny?
Like, again, the algorithm is just algorithming.
You're like, how is that happening?
Yes.
Like, who knows? I know I'm always fascinated by posts on LinkedIn where I'm like, this is doing so good. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then something that I would think like that I put a lot of thought into that I'm like, oh, this one's really going to go somewhere and it doesn't. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And I think it'll be really, I don't know that interesting is the right word because I've been repeating that over and over again, but it'll be surprising to see where we are in a few years with LinkedIn.
I know, with all social media, right? I mean, with whatever ends up happening with TikTok and then with how that continues to drive change within the Meta platforms. I mean, already like I have some friends who are more higher follower creators on Instagram, and some of the tools have been taken away because apparently Instagram is rolling out like another app called Edit that they are going to want you to edit all of your content in for Instagram. And then you'll be able to like push it to like your story or your reels or whatever. So it's interesting to see them because they've always been kind of a copier, like they didn't have stories and then Snapchat got real big and then Instagram was like, here's stories. Everyone come use it.
I mean, I might be kind of a jerk for saying this, but isn't that Zuckerberg's whole thesis? I mean,
right.
The Facebook, right, from Harvard was like, kind of like,
there was that whole lawsuit from those twins,
other people.
Right? Yeah, I know.
Were they twins?
I think they were twins or brothers.
Brothers?
I
don't remember.
Winklevoss or something like that.
That's right. That's
those
right.
Guys.
Yeah. So I think that has been the thesis of they let other people prove the concept.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like piggybacking and imitation and all of that. I mean, it happens in every facet of business.
Oh, totally.
We can knock Facebook and Instagram for doing it, but we all do it,
Well, and that's what creates like a marketplace, right? And that's what creates competition. And that's what drives, ultimately, in some cases, like better pricing when consumers have options and we can choose if we want to fly this airline or that airline, or if we want to drink this water or that water, or go to this hotel or that hotel, you got to have options. So it is definitely interesting, but it'll be interesting to see how social media continues to evolve. I mean, I think back to like the MySpace days. Yeah, I actually had heard at one point, because someone was like, oh my God, that's so MySpace, that you were going to be able to, and maybe you can. I think that it might actually be a feature that's rolling out to some people on Instagram where you can have like a music playing when someone goes to your actual page.
To your feed.
And like, hilarious. That's so MySpace.
I mean, I feel like we might as well just like bring back MySpace.
Yeah, top 8. You know, let's go.
Yeah, let's get real savage with it.
Oh my God. And that is, and think about how that, like, savage is the best word to describe like your top 8. You were literally ranking your friends in order of 1 to 8, being like, you guys are the most important to me. Yeah. And you, ma'am or sir, are number 1.
Yep. Yeah. It's so funny. It's like starting there, and then Facebook went where it was only at college, in colleges.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is so random, but I remember emailing Facebook when they were like proposing that they were going to open it outside of college students. And I was like, please do not. Because I was like, my parents do not need Facebook.
That is amazing. You emailed them?
I sure did. Obviously
awesome.
It didn't really go anywhere. But
yeah.
I emailed my thoughts to Facebook.
I think that there are certain pages like dedicated to like older people on Facebook and like the things that they write, meaning to be a comment, and then it ends up a status, or they write a comment on something that's intended for a friend and it ends up on like a recipe page or something where like hundreds of thousands of people can see it.
I worry for the day that I will be that person, because it's coming for all of us. That's
1,000%.
The reality. It's like our landscape that we're in now will not be the landscape that we're in when we're 65.
Yeah.
Or when we're 75 or 85. So it'll be fun to see how it evolves, like what it all looks like, what business impacts there are with it.
I mean, I don't know if you ever peruse your Facebook memories, but mine are some of the cringiest things in my life.
I went through a deletion spree.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wish I had more cringe, honestly, because I will say this. I tell this to my coaching clients all the time. Cringe is some of the best like reflection time, because you feel so good about how far you've come.
No, you know what?
How you've grown.
I appreciate that you just said that, because I just went through. So my friend Amanda is like really, really good at content creation, and that used to be like her full-time role. Mm-hmm. And she and I were working together the other day, and she was looking at my podcast Instagram, and she was like, you should like really like update your thumbnails on all of your videos. She's like, oh, because your whole Instagram is just reels. And she's like, and it's a ton of great content. She's like, but if somebody comes to your page and they're scrolling, they're not knowing what any of these reels are about. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, and actually they changed it so you can go in and edit your thumbnail, or you can just, you can just edit the text on top of it. So I went through and I did that, and I was like, I'm so proud of myself. See? And I'm like admiring my like hard work. But what was interesting is when I was going back through all of them, I had to listen to a lot of them, because it's not like I'm going to remember what, 80 different reels were all about. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, I've gotten better at this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So that was like, to your point, it was a nice reflection.
Yeah. You have to have those moments. I feel like it's so easy in life to feel like you don't ever want to be a beginner at something.
Yeah, but you have to.
Otherwise, you're never in the game.
Yeah, or you're just going to be sitting in the room by yourself.
Just want to watch people doing what you think you should do. Yeah. Or could do, right? Then you're always going to wonder, what if? I mean, really, that was my whole thesis in leaving corporate America and starting my coaching and consulting business, is I was just tired. I got the handle on Instagram, which I still haven't done anything with it. It's like nothing is posted. Women in Biz, like BIZ.
Love.
In 2016.
No.
Yes.
Doesn't that drive you crazy?
I'm like, what if I had
started then?
Yeah. So this is what I'm going to have to do after I leave, because I've now just shared with the world that I have that Instagram handle. Yeah. So I'm going to have to start doing Instagram, because I really just do LinkedIn now.
Yeah. But think about all the content you have. You have so many videos. Yeah. That's what I was just telling one of my friends. I'm like, you have so much content. I'm like, just start posting it on different platforms.
I know. I need to do that. That's my step for 2025. But 2016, like nearly 10 years ago. Yeah. And so, but I wasn't ready or willing to be a beginner in that moment. And I wanted to so bad. Yeah. But I clutched to this idea of I had to have a certain title and a certain level of experience before I stepped out to do this. And it has been helpful to have, I left as a VP in med tech, like having that experience, that street cred, building my network in the way that I did has allowed my business to be totally different than what it would have been in 2016. Right. But who knows? I could be in such a different landscape. But the fun part about it is instead of looking back and being like, man, I wish I would have, it's like, oh man, how far I've come since then. And how awesome is it that a year ago, 13 months ago now, I was like, I am so ready to be a beginner.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's so exciting. And think about how far you came in a year and think about how far you'll be at this time next year.
Yeah.
That's the most exciting thing for me. I mean, because going back to what you were just saying about your Instagram handle, like I had the idea for this podcast in 2018. Yeah. I started it in 2022. And was really only about a quarter's worth of time. I mean, great content, like the stories that like of the people that came on and talked with me were amazing, which like if anybody wants some really great, like everyday people, life-changing moment stories, go back and listen to season 1 of this podcast. I promise they're like so inspiring. And then like season 2 was like 3 episodes. So like season 3 last year is when I really was like, okay, I'm going to take this like super seriously. And now I'm like even more serious. Like the guy that does all the editing, like I have this Excel or Google sheet with like everything. And it's like so detailed. And he was like, I love that you're like this. And I was like, good, because I like, I'm so used to doing everything that like letting go was like, I was like, oh wait, like I don't have to edit this. It was crazy.
Letting go is another thing that you have to be ready for. Yeah. But you really do have to push yourself before you're ready. You know, same as being a beginner, you want to start like, you start scared, because if you don't start scared and then you're starting too late. Yeah. That's my opinion. And that's what I tell all my clients, because if you feel confident that you're going to be ready and successful for whatever role, let's talk about promotions at work. Like you're like, okay, I've got this, like 5 out of 5 skills. I match it all. Like this is awesome. I'm going for it. Yeah. You're too late.
No, I think that's a very,
you've outpaced that role already.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. I remember, it's funny. Memory popped in my head. At one time I had this great manager at Intel, and I was always someone that like didn't want to stay in the same like organization. I was like, well, what are they doing over here? What are they doing over there? Even if it was like in our organization, like we had so many different groups within it. Right. So I had applied for different jobs along the way, and I've only ever not got one job in my life. And can I tell you that like, I am so proud of that. Like, because I'm like, wait a minute, like but it's because I always would just go for it. I'm like, oh, well, what's the worst they're going to tell me? No, like you're not good enough for this role. Or you're not smart enough or more qualified enough. So I remember one day he sent me a job rec that was for a job that was probably like 5 grade levels ahead of where I was. And he was like, I could really see you doing this. And he's like, and you have no fear. You're always applying for things that like are, you know, just wherever. She's like, so he was like, so if you're interested, you have my full support.
Let me know. And did you go for it?
No, I didn't, because it was one of those things where I just literally like laughed. I was like, this is funny. But I was already had my eye on something else that I was on my way to. So but yeah, you just got to go do it.
You have to. I mean, I remember this was like, I don't know, 10 years ago now. I was listening to the CEO at Boston Scientific at the time. So, because I started my sales career at Boston Scientific in a clinical role. Okay. So my background actually is sports medicine. So cool. I used to be an athletic trainer. I was taping ankles, rehabbing knee injuries. Nice. I've had a very interesting and like, you know, kind of curly Q career.
I love that though.
Landed in med device because I had a girlfriend who in college, after she graduated, same degree program, she started in med device. I went to grad school. And then, before I went to grad school, I worked for my sorority, which is also a funny random.
Oh my God. Love. Yeah.
Traveled
Wait, were
the
we
country.
In the same sorority? Did we talk about this?
What sorority were you in?
Alpha Phi.
I was in Alpha Phi.
Shut up. Okay.
We did not talk about this.
We didn't talk about this. This is crazy.
Where were you in Alpha Phi?
University of San Diego.
Oh my gosh.
Where were you?
University of Iowa. And then I worked as an ELC. So I was those women that came in for recruitment.
Oh my God. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Did you have any leadership roles in?
Yeah, I was president.
So was I.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, you're now the podcast that's coming out this week. Oh, so wait a minute. Yours is coming out next week. I'm so confused with what day it is. Oh, I must be releasing 2 this week. That's why he was bugging me about the thumbnail, because it's going out tomorrow morning. Okay. She was also in Alpha Phi and was also president, but she was at the same college that I went to.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I got connected to her through one of our old advisors.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Who was the advisor?
Her name was Margaret. Last name was Goebel at the time. It's Linville now. I think she still is sort of involved, or at least a pretty big alumni supporter.
I probably would know her then. It's so funny, just the the paths, right?
Yeah.
That everyone crosses. I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of, so Alpha Phi, right? I mean,
Yes.
you know, like the ELC role is like, I literally packed 2 suitcases. And I lived on the road for 9 straight months. And I slept in the most random of places.
Oh,
like
God, I bet.
in bunk beds. I slept on
because were you like staying in houses or something?
In the sorority houses.
Oh my God, that sounds awful.
There was one time I stayed in the parlor room, University of Wisconsin. They didn't have an extra bed in the house. And so I slept on this couch that was like from the 1960s, I'm pretty certain. It was like the old school, like
all I'm imagining is like
wood.
taking a black light to that thing and just like how
I don't want to think about
it
that.
was also.
I don't want to think about that. The real luxury was when I was at LMU and they didn't have room in the chapter house, so they put me in a hotel.
Oh, fancy.
That was a real upgrade. Yeah. But so then I went back to grad school, still in sports medicine. And so I made my transition into medical device because I realized like from a pay standpoint, athletic trainers and everyone who works on the sidelines with those athletes to keep them healthy are true saints, but they make horrible money and have horrible hours.
Well, yeah, I'm always blown away. I'm always like blown away too. It's like watching NFL. It's like some of their games aren't starting until like 9:00 at night.
Yeah.
On the East Coast. I'm like, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they get used to it and then it's like a no big deal, but
it just becomes your lifestyle. You have the same lifestyle as an athlete. So my grad assistantship, I was the athletic trainer for Iowa women's volleyball.
Oh, cool.
And so when we had 6 a.m. practice, I was up at 4 because I had to be in the training room at 5.
Oh yeah, you got to tape those ankles.
Tape ankles and do treatments before practice. And then in the training room 30 minutes after practice. And then back when we had a game or a scrimmage or for our afternoon practice. And that becomes your life. And so it actually was a really great segue into medical device because medical device, when you do it right, it becomes a lifestyle.
Okay.
And you can have a really successful career, but your schedule it's not a 9-to-5 job and you're entertaining customers and you have weekend courses and all these different things. And so I was able to come in and it was almost, oddly enough, a perfect blend between my Alpha Phi experience, both from a leadership and a travel and just like having to hop in and build trust quickly and get to know people and make sure that they felt like they knew me and could like me and trust me and then the sports medicine side of it, of like working with doctors, I worked directly with the patients in the device that I worked with.
Okay.
Yeah. And spinal cord stimulators. And so I had, oddly enough, a ton of experience that was not directly related, but highly transferable.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it made it so when I hopped into device, I had this opportunity where I was like, oh my gosh, this is like really cool. Like I get to help people. I get to, I was driving all over. And I mean, it's like when you're young and you just like want a job. Honestly, I probably would have gone anywhere. And so they said,
for sure.
Hey, we have 2 openings in Arizona. And I was in Iowa at the time. I was like, yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah. Cool. I've never been before.
Yeah.
So I flew down and interviewed and they're like, how about Phoenix? I was like, that sounds great. But to tie it back to the Alpha Phi experience, when you were talking about like introductions and the people you meet, one of the girls that I was a consultant with, she was actually from Scottsdale.
Oh, how funny.
Went to University of Arizona.
Okay.
So when I moved to Phoenix, sight unseen for this job, because I graduated and then flew down 2 weeks later for the job. I'd never met her parents before, but I lived with her parents for like 2 months.
Oh my gosh.
They were just like the sweetest people.
So cute.
They opened their house to me. They were so kind. It made the transition so much easier.
Yeah.
And I think really it's like, okay, so why are we even talking about this right now? It's like every time, I've had a lot of round 2s, right? A lot of different rounds in my life. And the cool part is it always builds upon each other, even if you don't think it will.
Yeah.
My background in college, like I was a dancer. In addition to studying sports med, I have a BA in dance.
Okay.
And when I tell folks that, they're like, oh, it's not related at all. But it is related because I have this situational and spatial awareness that allows me to be in rooms and understand, people's nonverbal cues and read them and read movement patterns, which is very helpful when you're in the OR.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
And so it's so interesting. And I think that for anyone who's considering what's next, it's so important to remember that it's never like starting over again because you're always building on top of what you've already done. Absolutely. And so it might be different and you might have to help people better understand, like really translate for them. And that's a lot of what I do in my work is helping people that are looking to, grow their roles and change jobs or grow within the organization is help them understand how to talk about their experience and translate it into terms that are meaningful. Because unfortunately, and this is like LinkedIn too, if we just think about, oh, well, they should know I'm an expert because of what I post or what's on my profile. It's like, until you help someone understand that, like they're never gonna, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've had similar experience in translating your background.
Yeah, 1000%. And it's like, it's funny, kind of going back to what I said about, not being afraid to apply for different types of jobs or, moving within a company, doing different things. I always was very aware that, a job interview is me talking about me. So I'm an expert in me, or I should be, And so that's what I try to tell people. I'm like, you're an expert in you. You just need to learn how to talk about you in a way that is interview appropriate or interview friendly. And like, then you need to like present yourself in a way that is like showing like, hey, I did this and it resulted in that. And like, this is why I'm good at these things. And you're so right. I loved you so eloquently put that. I'm so glad we have that like recorded of how everything builds upon it itself. And that just because you're starting something new, it doesn't mean that you're like at ground zero. You're taking all of your steps and all of that stuff is underneath you. And sometimes you'll be surprised at what things translate or transfer. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like I'm doing good at this because of that? How weird. But then you're also like, of course.
It really all builds. And, I was having a conversation earlier today of someone who's like, man, it must have just been a blind leap of faith and taken a lot of like real courage to step out on your own. And had I done it in 2016? Absolutely. It would. And I jumped in 2024 before the net appeared, but I knew I had 15 years in med device, but call it 25 years of life experience that I'd already that had prepared me to do what I'm doing now, because if you really tie it back, it's like, helping women grow their careers is very different, but very parallel to helping women understand how to work together when they're in college.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Was that not one of the things? Like, it's so funny looking back and seeing how much that was. It wasn't just like, oh, this is so cool. I'm president of my sorority. It was a full-time job. Between all of the meetings, between all the Panhellenic stuff, between all of the events, all like Rush, like fraternity things. Like, I don't know if you guys had to we had like the Dean's Trophy application and that whole process.
All the Panhellenic stuff.
All of that jazz. Getting in trouble for things, having to get your friends in trouble when they were dumb and did something stupid. Oh, gosh.
Like really, truly having to be a leader and understand that being a leader meant tough conversations. And it meant when things weren't going how they should be going, that you couldn't just ignore them. And it's some of those foundational skills. And I think people get them outside of Greek life. You certainly get them in Greek life. There's a lot of different ways, but it's taking those experiences to leverage and then realizing, it's funny because like when we talk about it now, it's like, that seems like such a thing we did so long ago and like, it's a small part of our life, but it's all, again, it's building blocks. It's like planting the seeds.
Absolutely.
And like now, like
I mean, I still talk about it all the time. I've been out of college for over 25 years, and I still am like, no, that was a huge milestone. That was significant. That was that was like a foundational building block into like who I turned into. So, I mean, it's so crazy looking back on some of the things like, oh my God.
What's wild to me, and it's even, I see this in my entrepreneurial career. I saw it in, my med device career and everything before, but all of the times that I've been willing to just, it's like what you were talking about, just apply and be like, well, we'll see what happens. And I think that you learn some of those foundational skills really young. And if you continue to like stretch that muscle or work that muscle, right, you get better and better at it.
Absolutely.
So you become so much more risk tolerant. Because when I see people, whether in corporate or in entrepreneurship or just in life in general, when we get so tied to the outcome, that's where we struggle. Right. Because that's where.
Because you're trying to force something instead of just
you have letting to be it in go. A state of flow, and you have to just trust in yourself and your knowledge, and then also trust that whatever comes, you will be able to navigate.
Yeah.
Right. You have the skills. And if you don't have the skills, you will go find them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I mean, because I was just now thinking back to like you and your group course that you launched, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure even though you had like prepared it and you'd put it together and you had said, okay, this makes sense and this is how long it'll take and this is how I want to do it, I'm sure there was like a ton of trepidation when people started signing up, because then you're like, oh my God, now I need to deliver.
I got to deliver.
Yeah.
And I've, for 25 years, facilitated group programs, you know, and I guess 20 years. When did I graduate college? Close enough, whatever. I was like 18. So 22 years, as I age myself and been facilitating group programs and doing things like this on different scales, right?
Sure.
But yeah, there's always that moment of like, oh, but I will say this too, if you don't have, so same as like if you aren't a little nervous about applying, or if you think you're fully ready, that you are already overqualified for that job, that if you don't have a tiny bit of like, oh man, here we go.
Oh yeah.
That it isn't something that's important enough to you. And I used to always say this to my team when I was leading teams that were in the OR and working with patients, because you've got a patient on the table, you're bringing your device in. Like that's a lot of responsibility.
That sounds like
right? That's someone's
scary.
Mom or grandma or granddad. And in spinal cord stimulation, they actually work directly with the patients, the reps do. And so I would always tell them, it's like, if you don't have a tiny bit of like, do I have everything? That little bit of like healthy paranoia is what I call it. Then it's time to get out of the role. Because that's when you're going to make mistakes. That's when you're going to get too far over and overpromise and underdeliver. And that's the thing that kills careers. And it doesn't matter what facet of business, corporate or entrepreneurship that you're in, if you are promising something and you are so lax on the delivery and you can't or don't deliver, then you're never going to really get where you want to go. So was I nervous? Heck yeah. The beautiful and wild part of it is like, I built the content, I did the framework, I had everything, I'm locked and loaded. And then I get in this program and I meet the women and I see, and then I realize the real opportunity is, it's not like it's a digital course where they're just consuming the content. It's 75 minutes each week live with me where we're digging in together. Like the real beauty of it is meeting them where they are. It's not just taking what I thought they needed to know. And what I still feel passionately
pushing
about,
it on them.
Right?
Yeah.
But so it's like letting them show me what they need to. So the content has evolved. And I feel confident that it will evolve with every program that I do. Because
absolutely,
my plan is to run it 3 total times this year.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll see. I'm going to give Q4 a break just because, October, November, December, we'll see. I might run a shorter program in October, like a 2026. Gosh, that's crazy.
Doesn't that sound crazy to be thinking about that? I know.
Like a kickstart for 2026, but it sounds weird to say that.
Right. But I think that's great. You have to be, constantly forward thinking and deciding like, okay, like what do I want this to look like and how can this continue to evolve, and being realistic about your bandwidth and also what's going on. I mean, the Q4 flies by.
Yeah. And, I learned last year was a great learning experience because, I launched my business and had a lot of great traction. And then I saw the opposite, and I expected this, but it was just really cool to see it play out. Was that, for med device or any facet of business, but med device, a lot of the companies are on a calendar year, right? And so it's like year end, even if their company's not on a calendar year, their patients and their providers are looking at year end deductibles, facility have year end budgets, right? So no one wants to do a discovery call and think about coaching with Kat in December,
Fair.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's fun because then it also now it shows me for this year, for 2025, like, okay, what do November and December look like? So if you want to go on any trips, I'd like to talk about that now. Let's start planning. But, it gives this opportunity. And I think that it happens in every facet of our professional worlds where if we start to learn from the business, like learn the needs of the business, that predictive nature, then you can be better prepared to over deliver in the instances that you do have, right? And take advantage of those opportunities. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited to see where the group program evolves. And it's just been fun, and I have a few women that are just going through it like remotely. They're not joining the live sessions. They're doing the recordings. And then I had like an up-level package where they could do one-on-one sessions with me
cool.
too, which was, it's been really great.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, I think I toy with it of like, how do I make an accessible program from a price point standpoint? Because that's important, right? I want to meet people where they are from a financial standpoint, but also offer them enough of like real touch points and resources that they get the support that they need. Because you can go through the program and you could even do it asynchronously like some of these women are and not have the one-on-ones and still get good value from it. But I think the real magic happens when you're like working one-on-one, when you're taking the information, you're translating it into what does this mean for me?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I mean, I don't know. I know for me, for when I've gone through different things, it's always nice to have that time, whether even if it's only 15 minutes with the person that created it. So you can just kind of see like, okay, you know, am I interpreting all this right? Or like, here's a couple of really specific to me questions that I'd love your insight on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's great to offer that for people that want to accept it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it'll grow, it'll evolve, it'll change, kind of like your podcast has. I'm sure in a few years it'll be unrecognizable. Yeah. You know, for sure, one-on-one coaching is always going to be the heart and soul of my business because that's where the real magic happens. Yeah. When women or men decide to invest in themselves and recognize that getting a coach isn't admitting, oh, I can't do it on my own or I need help. It is allowing yourself to have the resources, same as you would get a trainer for your dog if when you got a new dog, right?
Or get a trainer for yourself, for your physical body.
Exactly.
I mean, it's your business mind, it's your business body or whatever, however you want to refer to it.
I'm glad you said that because that's one thing I really have tried to refine my messaging on because especially for new leaders, it's like you are a new leader. The best thing you can do is invest in yourself, not expect that your company is going to teach you everything. Right. But invest in yourself because also you are what makes the money.
Yeah, exactly.
So while I think we've gotten this mindset of like, I shouldn't have to pay to learn things for work, it's like, but that's how you make money. And if you can learn more and be better, you can make more money.
You can make more money. And maybe someone else will see you and say, hey, like come along, work for us now.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. I mean, you never know the connections that you make and the introductions and the opportunities that you have.
Well, I think also too that, you know, I feel like coaching and like, you know, personal training, therapy, anything where you're like where you're reaching out and you're investing in whether it's your physical health, your business health, your mental health, your emotional health, whatever it may be. It's just because you start doing it doesn't mean you have to do it forever.
No.
Like you can maybe do like, okay, I'm going to try this for 3 months. I'm going to give 1 quarter's worth of twice a month and like, let's see what becomes of it.
Yeah.
It's like the same, I don't know. Like I was just actually thinking today, I was like, okay, I think that I want to get a business coach for a few months this year because I think that I notice sometimes when I have conversations with different people, depending on what questions they ask me or if I feel challenged, I'm like, ooh, I felt challenged in this moment. And then I'm like, oh, that means something. And I need to listen to that and probably get help in this area because I felt like insecure when I got asked that question and I felt challenged. And then I'm like, okay, it's because I like need to grow. And like, there's a further step and I could probably use some help getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a, I always tell my clients it's like funny word because the only other anchor I have for this word is in custom suits. Okay. But it's bespoke.
Oh yeah. I love that word.
It is entirely bespoke because if you don't have a coach that's willing to build a program for you. Now there's other programs you can go through and people will take you through like leadership journeys and all these different things and that's fine. But when you have that opportunity and this revelation where you're like, I have some stickiness here or I have an opportunity here, so I want to lean into it. Yeah. That when you do that with the right coach, they're going to build a program and resources and support that will get you where you want to go. Yes, right. Yeah. And you can build in the timeline that works for you financially and you can build in all of those milestones that you want. So yeah, well, I'm excited to see who you end up working with and what all of that looks like. But I've had my business coach actually for 3 years now. Okay. And what my decision, so it's interesting, is I invested in, and she's a brilliant author and has her own podcast and does all of this great stuff. And she has a coaching program as well as a course program. And so I started working with her one-on-one while I was still in the medical sales world. And I knew I had a physician that I worked with her.
Okay.
She was like, I love her. It doesn't matter what facet of business you're in. She gives great insights, and she does. And she challenges you. And that's the thing I love the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also knew eventually one day I wanted to do what she was doing. Right. So it was great because I invested in that resource before I needed it.
Right.
And so when I made the leap, I didn't feel as scared because I had the support and resources. And so that's why I really tell women, if you're thinking you want to lead, if you're thinking you want to build a team, grow your career, do something different within medical sales, evolve your rep career. You don't wait until you move into that new role.
Right.
Yeah. The right time is when you're thinking about it, because then you get to really decide, okay, well, is it the right move? Yeah. Are these the things I want to be doing?
Yeah.
Right. Just like what you're thinking about right now.
It's so true. Yeah. And it's awesome. I'm super excited for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So one question I do want to ask though, because I'm just curious. Yeah. So like, what was it that made you finally like take the leap? What was it where you said, okay, I've had this Instagram handle since 2016, and then I've had these promotions, and I've done this and I've done that. Like, when along the journey were you like, I know I want to do something on my own?
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think it always takes a little bit of outside perspective to help us recognize. Because again, I didn't, I had the Instagram handle, I had the coach who I knew could get me there. And for me, I had this like mile marker in my head that once I had a VP title, then I would have this street cred, right? Which,
fair.
I think there is validity in that of I've lived and worked at a lot of different levels within med device. And so I can provide a lot of different insights. And from a consulting standpoint with companies, which I do that as well, I have a lot to offer and a lot to give in that capacity because of my experience. So I had a VP level role. I've been at a small startup, Saluda Medical. I helped commercialize the organization. We'd been commercial for a year. The team was like, pretty baked out. We had like a $10 million run rate as a company. And I looked at it and thought, okay, well, what's next?
What's next?
Yeah. And I just was kind of toying. And then my partner, he was like, why don't you go coach women? That's what you love to do.
Yeah.
And I just kind of was like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And then it just, like anything, right? It starts as a seed. And I thought, why don't I do it?
Yeah.
And the reason why I finally took the leap, and not that this is the right reason, but I was turning 40 the following summer. And I was like, if I'm going to do something wild and crazy and live my one wild and precious life, there's no time like now, right? Why not ring in my next decade as an entrepreneur?
Love it.
In a totally different facet and, space, just like professional space than what I'd been in. And so I looked at it and said, well, I could keep doing the same of what I was doing, which was helping organizations grow and helping people grow their careers. Or I could look at it and say, can I make a bigger impact elsewhere? Yeah. And I knew, even though I didn't know for certain all of the constructs of what my business would hold, I knew, just looking at my life over the last 15 years, I knew that what I could offer was really needed, that women needed the support, the resources, the insights to not have to have it feel like a rat race, but have it feel like a career that they could grow in. And so, I took one more look at it and said, all right, well, I feel confident that I have maybe something. I have confidence in my idea.
Yeah.
And decided to take the leap. So,
awesome. Well, I mean, it's obvious that you're incredibly passionate about it and that that you are able to make an impact and able to help people get where they want to go.
Yeah, it's been really fun to see it live out though, because even though, and I was having a conversation today about imposter syndrome, because it's like there's one of two camps. Your camp, like, yes, imposter syndrome is real, or camp, we shouldn't even be talking about imposter syndrome because like we're making it a thing and it's not.
Okay.
Which I'm in camp, like imposter syndrome, whatever you call it. We all have moments where we're like, oh God, is this the right move? Or can I really do this?
Oh my gosh.
I've been a leader in med device for 15 years and I still was like, can I really help people grow their careers? Of course I could. And so it's been so fun to see the women and men that I've worked with really blossom as professionals, grow their careers, grow their business, land in new roles, have the confidence and just get to see it play out. And the thing that I'm most, and we haven't really touched on, but really passionate about, is also like financial literacy for these folks.
Yeah.
Because when you make great professional decisions. And when you also, because we're well compensated, when you also tie that to smart financial decisions, your life looks totally different.
Absolutely.
You know, I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing now with the confidence that I had I not made some smart financial moves,
100%.
you know, early on in my career, same as you, right?
Yeah.
It gives you power.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's another thing that, especially as women, but just in general in society, we don't talk about that. That, okay, can money buy you happiness? Like, no, I mean, not long-term happiness, right?
Exactly.
But it can help you do things that you want to do, and it can give you the power and flexibility.
Yes, exactly.
It allows you to make decisions that make you happy.
Yeah.
And so teaching the next generation of leaders, of sales reps, that is possible, and it's also something that's really powerful for them. It just felt like a risk worth taking.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I'm like super proud of you. I think that as we get into our 40s, like so much changes. I mean, I remember one of my girlfriends calling me. She's maybe 2 years younger than I am. And I remember she turned 40 and she literally called me and she goes, "Wait, is this what you've been talking about?" And I was like,
"Wait, what have you been talking about?"
Like about how you just like get to a point where you're just like, so many things just don't bother you anymore. And you just don't care what other people think anymore. And you just do what works for you. And it's just so much less about other people and like their influence. But it was just so funny because it was like her, like the day after her birthday or something. She's like, "Is this what you mean? I feel like my last fuck just flew away yesterday." And I was like, "It did. It literally did." And I was like, "And don't worry, you'll have moments where some of them will come back. But then you'll let them go away again. And you'll just keep going and going and going." And you know, I often will, I mean, I've had this conversation with myself a lot recently about how, you know, on some aspects of social media, I still get like nervous about posting certain things. But then I'm like, wait a minute, like you have a podcast. You put yourself out there every single week, having conversations with different people. Oftentimes they're people that I've only maybe met for like 15 minutes on a Zoom. And then I sit and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you were just comfortable telling me your life story. Like, thank you. I love that." And so I'm like, why am I nervous about like posting this or doing that? So now I've got to a point where I'm just like, if I write it and it feels like it comes out easily and I'm like, okay, that reads well, I like it, I hit post, and then it's like, sometimes I actually forget. Like, I'll get a notification and I'm like, oh shit, I posted something. And then I'm like, oh, people are liking it. Oh, that's cool. Okay, great. And if they don't, I'm like, also like, okay, great. What's for dinner? You know, like don't care.
So there is so much power in that. I feel like I have had my flying fucks, I guess, if you will. Are we allowed to say that?
Oh yeah, totally. We can swear all day long. Yeah. There's an explicit button. Just click that one.
They're slowly flying away, right? I still have some of them every once in a while. Like the post I made today about Jalen Hurts and his all-female management team at the end. I was like, for the love of God, can we please stop with the interview adage of like, would I have a beer with them after work? Because that is just like, that kills me every time.
That's so funny.
But after, like, I have to hit post quickly now when I write something that I know is going to make me like think about it a little or have that like a little pit in my stomach. And afterwards I messaged another gal. I was like, I don't know how you do this, because she posts like very controversial stuff. And me saying that isn't controversial. Right. But to me, it feels controversial. Right. So it's just funny the value we assign to different things, right? You have a podcast, you have all of this impact and influence. But sometimes just hitting the post button feels like picking up, you know, that 10,000 pound phone. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's all a mindset.
It is. It's so mindset. Like every day, it's like, and it's something you have to work at. It's just like, it's like, just like working out. You have to like work on your positive mindset. Like I was talking to this gal today and she was talking about how she's really good at manifesting things. And I'm thinking like, okay, like tell me more, you know, because I want to be
Can
like
we have a master class in it.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? What kind of things is she manifesting?
Well, she said that like business things, or like she's a digital nomad. Right. And she said that the other, like a few weeks ago or whenever the timeline was, but she had gotten up and she does these meditations every morning. And she had said that she'd been really focused on figuring out like on envisioning like her next location, because she wanted to get a place that was more longer term. But she wanted it to be, you know, if she was going to live there longer term. So she had just like envisioned all of these different things. Fast forward a few hours later, she goes, she goes to go and get into her new spot that she was just staying in for like a month. The person who's supposed to meet her there, he's running behind. A car pulls up. this man rolls down the window and he's like, hey, do you need help like getting into the community? Turns out he's from the same place that she's from in England.
Oh my God.
So they get to talking and he says something about how he has an apartment that he could totally rent her for longer term, like along the same timeline that she's looking for. So she's like, oh my God, that sounds so cool. Like they trade numbers. So she goes to send him a WhatsApp. He's not responding to it. And so she's kind of like, okay, like whatever, you know, like life is. She goes out later that night for dinner, happens to go to a restaurant that she said she just kind of felt drawn to. I guess there was like an interior of the restaurant and like a back like garden area. And the hostess was like, you can sit in or out, whichever you want. She's like, oh, the garden sounds nice. Turns out that man is sitting back there with all these other people. And he's like, oh my God, I was just asking them to teach me how to use WhatsApp so I could respond to you. And I'm like, what? She's like, oh, I know, I manifest things all the time. And she goes, and I went and saw the apartment. It's exactly what I had envisioned. And I'm like, teach me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, energy is real. I will say that. Like the 100%. Energy you put out is the energy you get back.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times, it's funny. This is like a very different level of manifestation. Not at all like in a matter of hours manifesting an apartment. But my last year as a rep, I finished first in the company.
Nice.
And it was a great high to go out on. Yeah. And the whole like 8 months before that, I had a girlfriend. So I will say it's on two things, the power of manifesting and the power of having people believe in you and your potential. So I had a mentor who's now become a really good friend who told me, she's like, she bet one of her colleagues in the pricing and contracts division. She's like, I bet them that you would finish first this year. And I was like, me?
Yeah.
Like I'd have been in President's Club the year before, but that's like top 20. Like first is like
that's huge.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, it's possible. And then the next month's rankings came out, and she obviously had a little bit of insight on my growth that I didn't have, and I was up in like top 5, and so then for 8 months I was driving around town. I mean, I had a fire lit under my tail for sure, and I was busting my butt. But I was also, every time I got in the car, if I didn't have a call, if I wasn't listening to, the radio or a podcast, I was thinking in my head of what my acceptance speech would be.
I love that.
So by the time I won the award, I got up on stage
it, right?
And it just flew out of my mouth.
Absolutely.
There's some other things about that acceptance speech, but that's for another conversation and day. But
I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it totally but the reality is that was the mindset I was bringing to my customers, to my interactions.
Yeah. You were walking in like you were the number one rep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm going through with the women on negotiation. And that's a big focus of, how you start a conversation, the energy that you bring to it.
100%.
That influences the outcome of it. And I think we take that for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so good.
I know. Thank you for
being here. So tell everybody how they can connect with you.
Yeah. So LinkedIn, Kat Hurd. I think that's a pretty self-explanatory one. If you're interested in exploring what coaching is, it's kathurd.com. So kathurd.com/coaching.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening and being here and enjoying these awesome episodes. And we will see you next week.